So I remember back in 2010, I started dealing with some head pain, some throbbing head pains in the back of my head. I started freaking out about it, not knowing what it was. Ran off to my doctor because the first thought that came in my mind was that I had a brain tumor. And after talking with him, he told me that what I was dealing with was anxiety. And that was the first time that I was told, and it was the first time that I saw what anxiety could actually do to your body.
Now, my experience is a little bit different because I really didn't know what I was dealing with was called anxiety until I met you. When I was dealing with what I was dealing with, I really just looked at it as the same thing that I was dealing with when I was high. And so I had no idea that I could put a label or an actual medical term to it, that I was dealing with something bigger than what I originally thought.
And that'll make somebody wonder, how many Black people just don't know that what they're actually dealing with is a form of anxiety. And that's something that we need to discuss.
Exactly. So let's get into the next episode.
Let's get into another episode of Black Relativity,
Ladies and gentlemen,
where we discuss all topics, tribulations, and issues that are experienced within the Black community, from the standard to the most controversial. No filters, no boundaries, just real talk. This is Black Relativity with your hosts, Gary and Shireen Mariner.
So the first thing I want to start out with is just something that I came across online as far as a statistic, and this is from the Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health. And what they state is that Black adults in the U.S. are more likely than white adults to report persistent symptoms of emotional distress, such as sadness, hopelessness. And it also says that Black adults living below the poverty line are more than twice as likely to report serious psychological distress than those with more financial security. So what I want to talk about is how we can better help other people in the Black community to recognize mental illness, how we can seek help, how can we recognize the signs of it. And as Gary mentioned, he didn't know what he was dealing with was. He wasn't able to really put a name on it.
I mean, a lot of the things that I was dealing with back in New York with all of the trials, tribulations, stressors, and things like that, the only thing that I knew that I could actually put a name to was stress. I knew that I was dealing with a lot of stress, but, living in New York in a major metropolitan, that just kind of comes with the territory. But to know that it may have been anxiety or depression or PTSD or anything, I had no idea. And it wasn't until I met you that I started to understand that there's an actual terminology to it, a medical term that can help me to understand what I'm dealing with and why.
And me being in the healthcare field, I knew of anxiety, but I just thought it was just a feeling of being nervous. And that was it. I did not know all of the effects that anxiety could showcase itself in your body. And so when I had a lot of anxiety, I did not realize that it could showcase itself as a lot of different physical symptoms. In my case, I come to find out later on down the line, after dealing with anxiety for like 10 plus years, my initial experience and my initial thought process where I was running off and thinking I had a brain tumor helped me to realize that it was something that was kind of subdued, something that I may have heard about, seen about somebody in my family experiencing, that actually kind of just came back up into my mind. And I just started thinking that, oh, well, maybe I'm dealing with the same thing. So my anxiety started stemming around health. And what I saw with me is that whenever I got extremely stressed out, it would showcase itself through symptoms in my body. That can be headaches, that can be pains in different parts of your body, shortness of breath, and all kinds of those things. And I did not realize that that's what was going on with me. When my body was showcasing those symptoms, I automatically thought it was the worst possible thing, that it was a life or death matter, and it would continue my cycle of anxiety.
See, with me, mine's is more so situational. You know, my stress, anxiety, PTSD, depression, all of that started out from a traumatic experience when I was a child. And it just built and built and built over time. It kind of took a hold of me, made me look at people and situations and friendships and just general life in a different way.
And I think that with the way that you experience anxiety, that kind of leads into our next point, where within the Black community, it's kind of seen that we're supposed to have this mindset of being strong and resilient. So the first thought that comes to our mind when we're stressed may not be, oh, I'm dealing with anxiety or depression or anything like that. It just may be, okay, I'm stressed. I need to kind of get through this. I need to do what I need to do and keep it moving. And so we don't talk about it as much as we should.
That also, on my side, and I know a lot of us, anybody who's listening to this can probably say the same thing. From a church standpoint, you're told to let go and let God, because He has you, and He'll never let anything happen to you that you're not able to
That you
deal
can't
with or
handle.
handle. Exactly. And at the same time, being a man, you know, sorry to say, but it's like, yo, stop bitching, man. Stop being a pussy. Get yourself together. You know what I'm saying? Fix your face. Straighten your back. Say it with your chest, like Kevin Hart say. And so we have all of these things in our head that makes us feel as though we should just be able to cope. And then there's this whole idea of a coping mechanism to try and deal with the things that you really need help with.
Well, look at our history and what Blacks have been made to deal with through slavery and have had to push through and just kind of just deal with. We're looked at as very strong individuals, very resilient, because we can get through and have shown to get through a lot of things, but that's only because we've been forced to. And it doesn't mean that we don't need help, or that, some of us may be weak when it comes to certain things, which is okay. It's okay to be weak and to need help, but we just don't showcase that.
That getting to the whole slavery thing and just what we've had to deal with just as Black people over the past almost 500 years. There's so much that we've had to endure, so much trauma, so much stress that comes from every single aspect of life. You don't even realize that you're dealing with something that's causing you to either have a crazy amount of stress, deal with anxiety, deal with depression, or causing you to deal with PTSD in a way that you've never even known.
Well, you look at the things that Blacks tend to have to deal with on a regular basis. You look at our living situations where, we may not be able to afford to live in certain areas, or areas that we may live in are, run down, and, they're not of high quality that we would want to, but that also leads into, Blacks not getting paid the amount of money that they're supposed to get, that they should get paid compared to their white counterparts. That can cause a lot of stress, especially if they have children, if they have, a home and bills and things like that. They build up stress from trying to stabilize their financial situation. And then you got at what everybody's talking about now, the racism aspect, trying to do things a certain way to avoid racism, or trying to figure out how to navigate racist situations. All of those things can cause stress within Black person. And that can lead to anxiety, depression, that they'll ultimately need help for.
I mean, there's so many different things, you touched on a good percentage of them, but you could turn on the TV, you could open up your cell phone, go on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, even watch videos on YouTube, and you're going to come across either some Black person who just got murdered, some Karen or Ken situation, some racist police officers, some KKK, neo Nazi, white supremacist motherfuckers who are just doing whatever they want to do. And all of those things impact our mental psyche that cause so much trauma that only we as black people have to deal with. It's just, it's unrealistic for us to think that we don't have to look at our mental health and take it seriously.
And when you think about taking your mental health seriously, that'll go into trying to find somebody within that profession that can help you. From something that we've read online, on psychiatry.org, on that website, they listed that only 2% of psychiatrists identify as Black. So you can imagine the issue with trying to find someone that is able to relate to your struggles or what it is that you may deal with, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of Black people may not want to go to a white psychiatrist because they may feel like they're not going to understand what it is that you're dealing with in order to help you.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, if you don't understand my struggle, if you don't understand my reality, then how the hell could you help me? And that's the first thing that we think about. Why am I going to go and talk to some psych, sit on some couch and sit there and talk about my woes and yada, 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 and you don't even understand the first thing about what I'm going through?
I agree. That's one of the reasons why I've been a little hesitant in seeking therapy or a psychiatrist myself. It's a little hard trying to find Black psychiatrists that will be able to relate to what it is that I may deal with, in addition to trying to find somebody who specifically may treat the type of anxiety that I actually have.
I have family members who have gone through therapy or currently going through therapy and they swear by it. And then I've got people who really need the help and would never talk to somebody to get the help that they need.
But why is that?
And that goes back to, our habits and, our upbringing and what we've been told that's been passed down from when we were slaves. Who can you trust? Who knows you better than your own? The village mindset where there's the village elder that you go to and kind of teaches you, but we don't have that anymore. So we got to learn and find acceptance with using the methods that are available to us to deal with what we're dealing with.
It doesn't necessarily have to be taking medications. I've been on and off medications for anxiety, just for a little bit more in the latter years of me dealing with anxiety, because sometimes you need a break. But I can understand the stigma behind the medication as well, because medication doesn't fix your problem, but it kind of decreases the symptoms while you work on addressing the root cause of your problem.
And, there are other ways that we use or have been using for a long time. I'm one of those people when things just get me to the point of blowing my top where I feel like I want to punch a hole in the wall, I'll go and take me a sip of some liquor, or I'll roll me a blunt. Whatever I need, take me a piece of CBD candy or some weed candy or whatever to help me mellow the fuck out, because this also can lead to abuse, physical, mental, emotional abuse in your relationship with your children, your spouse, your family members. This is it relates to or is connected to so much. And if we don't handle this or take it more seriously, we're going to see more and more of this, and it will never be controllable.
Well, it's like what my dad would say to me often. He often wondered, how do I enjoy life dealing with what I'm dealing with? How can I enjoy life if I wake up in the morning and I feel nervous? Don't even know what I'm nervous about, but I just feel nervous. I go through the day, just my mind is wandering on negative thoughts or thinking worst scenario type of things. You can't go through your day each day thinking that way. It's just not a good way to live. So you have to find ways to try to help solve your problem. For me, I don't do the things that Gary does to help him with his stress and anxiety. Me, I'm more of a yoga, meditation type of thing. I need some me time, kind of separate myself from people in my house, or just get alone so this way I can clear my thoughts. And that tends to help me a lot better.
I also, on top of the methods that I talked about, which I try not to use as much as possible because of how that can affect or inebriate how I respond to my children, to my wife. There are a lot of people who rely on me to be straight minded. So sometimes that's why you'll find most guys who are heavy into video games, where no matter whether it's something that, as far as basketball, football, or, these military games where you get to go and kill people and let off your frustration, those are therapeutic in a certain way. But each time you're taking away from what else you need to do in life. And so then you end up beating yourself up for not focusing or paying attention to what may be more important. But at the same time, you're not dealing with your mental health to allow you to be able to focus and enjoy the time that you could have had not doing what you were doing.
I also think that dealing with your mental health, at least for me, is about taking the time to put yourself first. You have to take time to put yourself first. You have to be better in order for you to be better for other people. And I noticed that within myself, if I'm dealing with something stressed, anxious about whatever, it causes me to be more removed from my husband, from my child, from my dogs. It doesn't matter. I'm not as engaged with any of them because my mind is too focused on whatever negative thought it's going through or whatever it is I'm dealing with. And you miss out on different parts of life because you're just too focused on negativity. So I think it's just very important for everybody to take time for themselves every day, no matter how long it is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, just something that you enjoy doing. You just do it every day. Just try to, even if it's very hard. I mean, if you're a mom, like I'm a mom, that can take up your time 24/7. And by the time your child goes to sleep, you're ready to fall out of sleep yourself. So it can be hard, but it is so important to prioritize yourself to be better for other people.
At the same time, you also have to realize that it doesn't matter whether you're black in America or you're just black in the world, wherever you are. You got to realize that statistically, you deal with more than most. You can't limit or try to underscore or take down the magnitude of what we have to deal with as a people on this planet, thanks to everything that has happened since colonialism and the Europeans decided to just lay claim to all of us.
I can agree with that.
It's a lot deeper than we give acknowledgement for.
And that's something that we'll definitely be getting into in future episodes to kind of give that background on where some of the rooted stress, PTSD, depression stems from within the Black community.
Now, there is a statistic that states blacks are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population.
And this is from the psychiatry.org website as well.
Now, and it states this could be explained by a hesitance to seek care until they are in crisis. Now, this is very easy to understand when you look at a guy. It doesn't matter whether you think about grandpa, pop, or whoever, or even yourself. If you're a woman listening to this podcast right now, you should know we are very hesitant to go to the doctor for anything.
Well, why is that?
I don't know why that is. I think it has to deal with this mindset of, we can take anything, we can handle anything. We're supposed to be the strongest person in the house. We're supposed to be the king of the castle. We're supposed to be able to, wear through it all. And so we have this mindset that ain't nothing gonna take me down because I can beat this. But the reality of the matter is,
but you don't know what you're trying to beat until you actually go to a doctor. So
that's the point.
And so it goes back into going to the doctor just for regular checkups to make sure that everything is all good. I mean, I even read somewhere, I can't think of where I read it at, but there was something I read where it was being discussed about how physicals, our annual physicals that we do get, should start including mental health assessments, because it's becoming such a big thing now with everything that's going on with COVID and people being at home and people losing their jobs, losing their homes and everything, that it should be a part of your annual physical because it affects your body. It has affected my body and showcased itself with many different symptoms that I just won't go into, but um, it's something that should be checked out. This way you can kind of get a handle on it before it starts getting out of control.
I mean, even before COVID came around, I mean, don't get me wrong, COVID really spiked anxiety and depression and stress from not being able to be around your loved ones and so on and so forth, and just everything that we had to see, the death count, all of that.
But look at what they talked about on the news, where in the beginning of COVID, they talked about how it was affecting blacks primarily. That more blacks were getting sick with COVID. Now, I'm not sure if that just specifically had to do with uh, blacks that may have been more of a population that may not have had insurance, may not have been able to get to a doctor or go to a doctor because of financial reasons, or if it's because of blacks dealing with certain hereditary diseases, heart disease, things like that. They may have pre-existing conditions. That's the word I was looking for. That they may be more likely to have pre-existing conditions where COVID would affect them more. But whichever the case, it was affecting Black Americans more. So of course, it's going to increase our anxiety about going out and doing things because it's affecting us more.
And then before there even was the COVID scare, for anyone who was watching the news, for anyone who had a family member or a friend or anyone who was connected to all of the different black people who were murdered by police over the past 5, 6, 7 years underneath Trump, underneath Obama, whatever the case may be, and all of these things that we had to literally sit there, watch, have conversations about, and how we had to deal with that and how that impacted us. We've been dealing with this for so long, and we just do not go and get the help that we deserve. And we don't even know what to call it to know what type of help that we need.
And that's why there should be those types of evaluations. I mean, if you and sometimes people may say they just don't have time. And then a lot of insurances may not even cover it, which is another issue. So even if you have insurance, you may not be able to have insurance cover the financial aspect of it. So then you're hesitant on getting care just because of that. Outside of just going to a doctor and they just giving you a pill to say, hey, take this or whatever for your anxiety or depression, but you want to address the root cause. So, it would be good if more insurance companies would provide that level of care for mental health.
And I think, you know, from a news standpoint, there are people who are trying to push for this to be brought to the mainstream and for it to become a regular thing, which, you know, this is something that we'll get into on another episode, but the whole, you know, reallocation of the police funding to allow for medical people to go and deal with mental health calls specifically so that they can take care of those things and deal with them properly so that they don't end up with black people dying who are dealing with a mental health episode, because that's really what's going on. We are way too stressed the fuck out and no one cares. And everyone needs to have an opportunity to understand what they're dealing with, get used to having these conversations, and make it more normal. We all need to embrace this and get used to it because we've been dealing with it for way too long.
And we also have to take the time to care ourselves, even if no one else seems to care about our mental health. We need to make sure that we care about our mental health and put that as a priority, because you're not going to be able to function efficiently by just trying to push through.
Now, we're going to have on our website, look for the link for this particular episode so that way you can gain access to the specific URLs or links speaking about all the different topics that we've discussed up until this point. We're even going to have a link on the website, and I'll have Shireen go more into that. That's going to help you understand what you may be dealing with.
Basically, it's going to be a screening tool that I was able to come across online that will help you to see what kind of mental health issue that you could be facing if you feel that you are dealing with some mental health issues. Of course, you always want to go by the guidance and the diagnosis of your doctor. That should always be priority. But this can give you some sort of insight on what you may be dealing with so you can try to start seeking help for it.
And knowledge is key. Once you have a base understanding, and this, I speak very highly of this because coming into this relationship, I did not have any understanding of these terms. I thought all of this stuff was something that white people dealt with. I didn't think that we dealt with it as black people. I just thought we were just stressed the hell out. And, God was going to take care of us. God got us. And that was it. That was the end of the story.
I don't know if my mindset wasn't along the lines of, I just didn't think that we dealt with anything like that. I knew about it, but like I said, I've been in the healthcare field since I was 17 years old. So I knew about these things, but I didn't know to the extent that it can affect you, that it can showcase itself. Like I mentioned at the beginning, my thoughts about anxiety was that anxiety was just maybe constant nervousness, and that was it. I didn't know that it could be headaches or body aches or shortness of breath, heart palpitations, all of these things. I did not know that that's something that people can experience, or even panic attacks, which is that's just the worst to me. Dealing with panic attacks and having these fight or flight feelings, I didn't know that it would showcase itself like that. And no one should have to go through that. You have to start identifying these things so you can get help.
Just to show an example, a couple of months ago, we were driving in the car. I was in the car with my wife and my son in the back, and we're just driving home. It was a regular day. There was nothing going on. And all of a sudden, I see the flashing lights and I hear the siren and I see this cop car flying down behind me. Immediately, I went into full-blown panic attack because the first thing that came into my head was, man, they just killed this black man the same way a couple years ago, where he didn't do anything wrong and he was being nice to the cops. And all of a sudden he got shot in the car with his girl and his kid in the back seat. And I'm looking at the whole situation like that could be me. And I pull over to the side and the cop car ran past me to go where it was going.
Well, the cop car. Well, the cop car was following us. Well, it wasn't following us per se, but it was behind us for a specific distance because it was going off into an apartment complex. What I saw at the beginning of that was that there were cops way ahead of us, and I believe that the cop that was behind us was trying to catch up with those cops to go into the apartment complex. So the cop was behind us for an extended period of time, which sent Gary into that panic attack because it would seem as though maybe he was trying to check our license or something like that. But the cop was behind us because he was waiting to get to this apartment complex. And eventually he just ended up veering off to the right to go into the complex. But because of what we have seen on the news and what has been going on, you don't know that right off the bat. You see a cop behind you and you're wondering how this is going to end up.
So what that did for me is that sent me into immediate fight or flight because I'm completely trying to protect my life that I have so much value for. And, you start thinking about what could happen and you try to prepare for the situation. And my body is just tensing up like I'm ready to get into war with this dude if something crazy happens. But then when the cop car dips off and everything is cool, now I start to experience the effects of all of that and what that did to my body. And I start shaking and going through a whole bunch of issues.
You tensed up. When Gary goes into a panic and like I mentioned, that fight or flight, Gary goes into fight mode. His body tightens up. He balls his fists. And he's kind of, I don't want to say ready to go to war, but that's how he's preparing his body for protection. Basically, he's trying to protect his body, like he mentioned.
Now, the reason why I brought this example up is, number one, white police officers do not understand this is what we are dealing with when they approach us, because this is what we've seen over the past several years, and this is the history of how they deal with us. And so there's an immediate PTSD that comes from that, and that afflicts all black and brown people. And if they understood that, maybe they would change. But because we don't have the mental health care that we need to deal with those impacts, and they are not aware of how it has impacted us, and of course, that doesn't happen when they come across another white individual driving a car and they're stopping them. They're not going to get into a panic attack. They're not dealing with PTSD with the police, but we are. And because there's no understanding on either side, because one, we don't give any acknowledgement to it. We don't deal with it. We don't even know how to, name it to get the help that we need. And then they don't even realize that they've done all of that to us. So how is this supposed to change if no one does what they're supposed to do on either side?
And that's a big question. I mean, it's hard to say how that will change. Yes, things will need to change on the side of police, more so just to showcase something different. We need to see something different. That's not to say, that there would just be no killings by police officers to black people or even to white people. That's still out there. But because we just see the difference in how blacks are treated when compared to whites given the same situation, that just often creates this stigma in our minds, and you just have fear. Now I've never had any negative interactions with the police. I've been pulled over if I may have been going too fast and I may have gotten a ticket or something like that. And rightfully so. That's what happens. But even still, if I see a police car behind me, for some reason, I start getting nervous. And that's because of that embedded fear from everything that we see on TV. It's not even from me dealing with my own experience with the police or negative experience with the police. I haven't had that. But I still have that fear because I am a black woman. And I have seen how black people have been treated, and I just don't want that to be me.
At the same time, just to set the record straight, I have a lot of police officers in my family. I've got people who've been in the military, who served this country well, through one war or the other. So it's not that I have this negative opinion over all of police, but I can't help but fear for my life in a situation where I don't know how this is going to go down, and I know what the normal is based off of what I see versus what I've dealt with. Now, I haven't had to deal with a racist police officer more than twice out of the 10 times that I may have had to deal with them. But when it comes down to family, I mean, my family is black, so a black police officer is a different story, but we'll get into that at a different time. What I did want to bring up, just a little bit of helpful research, something that you all can watch to kind of get an understanding of how PTSD, anxiety, trauma, and depression can impact us or have impacted us. I think a great series that you could watch, if you haven't watched it already, is the series Them on Amazon. Now, we're going to have a link posted for this particular episode underneath this episode on our website, so that you can go directly to it if you have never heard of it. Check out the YouTube video on it as far as the trailer on it. Well, I think we both would recommend that you watch that series.
And I don't think that the trailer doesn't really do the series justice, and it doesn't really, I mean, at least for me, when I first saw the trailer for this, it came across to me like it was some kind of creepy, stalkerish type of, maybe there's some racist family. My first thought when I saw it was, okay, we have a black family here. They moving into a white neighborhood, and these white people that live here, they don't want them there.
I
And
thought it was a Jordan Peele ripoff. But anyway, keep going.
and I that's what I thought it was. And I said, okay, it's one of those type of series. I was not prepared for the different types of scenarios that it would kind of put in front of you, and how it would basically showcase in many different aspects what we as a Black community deal with. It's very, very interesting, and it's very emotional as well. It will definitely make you emotional, as it did me and Gary, to kind of see when these scenarios are played out, how much we can relate to it. And it's sad.
I mean, we've already went over in the first episode where you got to know about us, where we stated I'm an emotional guy, so I'm not gonna sit here and try and act tough and all of that. There was a couple parts in there where I shed a tear, but there's a couple parts in there where
He was very angry.
I was like, yo, I would kill them too. I don't care. But
Episode 5 did it for me. So if anybody does go out and watch it that hasn't seen it, episode 5, especially from a woman's standpoint, is a very, very emotional episode.
And I would say, I think it was either 6 or 7 that hit me from the man's standpoint. And then when I think you get to episode 8 or 9, where it brings the church into it, that one hit me super hard.
That one was a very, very interesting one as far as how they intertwine the history of the church and all of that.
Now, we're not going to do a full review on that. That's going to be something in a later topic, another episode that we're going to get into, where we're going to go and do a deep dive into that series to kind of give you an understanding of just, how it impacted us, or what it showcased to us, and why we feel that this connected so much with PTSD, anxiety, trauma, and depression. Just to give a specific example without getting into detail, bleaching is a big topic amongst the Black community, and has to deal with everything that we've done or been through with racism, how the
and traumatic events as well. I mean, it deals with traumatic events and how that plays out in how you may interact with people, or with certain people based on traumatic events, or how you may just behave from situations that you may have been with, things that you may have seen. It kind of goes through all of that, and it's just a very powerful series. I can't wait for the second season to come out if they do that. But it's definitely something that everyone should check out, even if you're not Black. I mean, watching it as someone that's not a person of color is also good as well, to kind of get more of an understanding of what Black people may have gone through, where they may be coming from when they may interact with you a certain way. It's something that everybody should watch.
And I think that, well, one of the things that I want to do, because yes, this entire podcast is going to be to educate the Black community, or to bring light to things that the Black community is not aware of or not focused on. But I also think that it is really important for the white community to understand what we are going through, what we are dealing with, what has caused these things, so that you can have a better understanding of what's going on in our minds and in our mental, world. So thank you for paying attention. We do appreciate you really listening in. Make sure that you check out the URL that will be posted, so that you can get a chance to check out these links. Don't take what we say as
for face value.
Right. Don't take it as gospel. Do your research. Look at the links. Go and try and figure this out, so you can have a better understanding on your own, because education is key. Knowledge is power.
And when it comes to your mental health, make sure you check out the website for the link to the screening of, how you can see what kind of mental health issue you may be dealing with. And it'll also provide you with resources for starting your journey into healing yourself as well.
And of course, if you like this episode, make sure to subscribe. Make sure you share it. Put something up on social media. But also, we want to get feedback from you. We want to know, what topics do you want us to touch on? What do you want to hear from us? We love to get your feedback.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And check out our website at blackrelativity.com for additional info and discussions. Also, if you know someone that will like this content, take a screenshot and share it on social media. From the standard to the most controversial topic, we got you covered. This is Black Relativity.